So good morning, everyone. My name is Anu Märkälä, and I'm here in the role of the EOSC Finnish Forum Engagement Officer. And I'm very pleased to welcome you all in this webinar where we will hear insights from 3 Finnish experts who attended the RDA plenary in mid-November in Costa Rica. So we will hear 3 presentations. First, Heidi Laide from CSC will present the Global Open Research Commons model and the interest group on national data services. Then Joonas Kesäniemi from CSC will tell us about fair mappings and collaborations and forming of the new working group. And lastly, we will hear from Pia Markkanen about the data steward and researcher insights on the plenary themes. And without further ado, I'll give the floor to Heidi. And like said, we can take like clarifying questions directly after the presentations, but let's keep the discussion part at the end of the webinar when we stop the recording. So please, the floor is yours, Heidi.
Sorry, I again, yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
Just lost the Zoom controls for a second. Do you see which display? Should I swap the display?
No, it's fine now.
Okay, very good. So you do see the presentation. Okay, so sorry for my cough. Good morning to everyone. So I'm Heidi Laine from CSC, and part of my duties as CSC is acting the contact person for Research Data Alliance, and I'm also representing CSC in the Research Data Alliance organizational assembly. And I was the official CSC representative at RDA. So first of all, before I get into my kind of main takeaways from the content side of the event, just a few stats from this particular 23rd plenary of our RDA. So this time there were 170 virtual. Nowadays, all of these, also when there's a face-to-face participation option, there's always remote participation. So all RDA plenaries nowadays are either hybrid or fully online, and this was a hybrid one. So there were 170 virtual attendants and 194 in-person attendees. So a little bit smaller, at least on the on-site participation side, but it made it kind of I think quite a nice atmosphere, and it was really easy to talk to people. So a really successful plenary, I think, in that sense, even though the numbers are a bit smaller than some of the, for example, the European plenaries or the North American ones. It is understandable that these tend to get a lot more participants because RDA has bigger communities in Europe and North America, and also Australia. And this was actually the first ever plenary in a Latin American country. So a historic one in that sense. And there you see how many participants there were from different parts of the world. So there too you can see that RDA is very strong in North America and Europe. But of course the South American flavor was very strong, maybe not so much in numbers, but in kind of, if not quantitative, then qualitatively. So there were 15 birds of a feather sessions and 36 group meetings, and those were either interest group meetings or working group meetings. So then to the Global Open Research Commons, which is one of my kind of, for me, was one of the highlights of this plenary, and there weren't actually, I don't think there were any meetings of this working group directly in the program, but it just this global open research commons model was everywhere regardless. It was mentioned in almost all of the sessions that I attended. So it's it's become something that is very influential, and it has a lot of application potential. So I think it's something that we should start paying, I think, more attention in Finland as well, because it's a really useful conceptual tool. So first of all, I think to the Finnish audience, at least certainly for me, in the beginning, the kind of what's commons, it was kind of a little bit difficult to understand. So commons are just basically resources that are accessible to all members of society or a community. And traditional examples include forests, fisheries, like natural resources. In the Nordic countries, of course, in Finland we have the jokaisen oikeudet, the right to roam. So that's maybe commons that is most familiar to us. So a research commons is a virtual space or platform that that presents researchers with a marketplace, although not necessarily always marketplace in the sense that you have to have money to get things, but still a marketplace in the sense that things are exchanged. You have to have maybe tokens or credits or whatnot, but you can acquire data and services. And examples of research commons currently are, for example, the European Open Science Cloud, the Australian Research Data Commons, the African Open Science Platform, and then, of course, loads and loads of local and national examples. So this global open research commons model was developed by an RDA working group as a kind of aspirational model. So not necessarily to represent the actual situation, but kind of the ideal situation for these research commons, and the application potential is really wide at different levels. You can use it as a framework when you're building research commons, when you're evaluating, when you're comparing commons, and on a national level, regional level, or even just organizational level. So I think, yeah, this is a really useful tool. And let me show in the next slide what it is all about. What are these essential elements for research commons? And this is not a deep dive. Of course, we have very limited time here, so just a teaser, hopefully something to get you interested and get you to want to familiarize yourselves more on these topics. And I'm certainly still a student on this topic, but very interested one. So these are the essential elements, and it's kind of a list of ingredients, and it's up to the organization or the commons how to apply them. But the lighter blue ones, they are the kind of technical capabilities or capacities that the research commons needs. Then the white ones are the more kind of softer capabilities, human capacity, rules of participation, governance, so forth. And then in the middle with the dark blue, you see the kind of the glue that ties everything together. That's interoperability and standards. And this was the first outcome of this working group, and it was endorsed, sorry for the typo, endorsed as a supporting RDA output. So what came next is this more detailed. It's essentially the format of the output is a spreadsheet that I have just a screenshot here, but you can get the link. I can share it after my talk, and this allows you a really real deep dive to all of these essential elements. They are here as as tabs, and then for each essential element of the Open Research Commons model, there's like definitions for a particular more granular things that it consists of, and this has been endorsed as a RDA recommendation. So that's the kind of the highest level of RDA outputs, good quality, really useful, widely applicable outputs from the research. The RDA community get this endorsement. Like I said, there's a wide potential for application. One of the examples is that I thought that I'd highlight super quickly here is Reason from Norway, Research Commons for Norway. I think this is the first first instance where the GORC model has been applied from the beginning when building a research commons. So in the interest of time, I'm not going to get into details. These are just screenshots from presentations on the reason, but it's a national data infrastructure in Norway, and they have found the GORC model very useful for reasons that are highlighted here, and they have found this useful also in the EOSC context. As you know, we are in the middle of kind of kickstarting the EOSC Federation with introducing national nodes and thematical nodes. So this GORC model could really serve the EOSC Federation as kind of this giving this kind of blueprint for an EOSC node. So a similar approach can be seen in, for example, the European data spaces, where the Data Space Support Center has introduced these building blocks. So I think these GORC elements are very they remind me a lot of these data space building blocks. So a very similar approach, but of course more suited for public organizations serving communities of researchers. The data space building blocks are more directed for industry. Let's see then. And there are other parties following in the footsteps of Reason. For example, in UK, this model is being applied in the context of human biological data in the biosphere. Canada Alliance Cloud Connect pilot is using the GORC model. New England Research Cloud, Australian Biocommons, in the Netherlands SURF has been using the GORC model, and in Sweden, for example, SUNET, and for different reasons, of course, many of these bodies are already existing and established, so they might be using the GORC model for self-evaluation or in order to kind of communicate their services and structures better. And then just one slider about National Data Services Interest Group. Another thing, the second thing that I would like to highlight, and also connected to the GORC, because this interest group will collaborate closely with the follow-up working group on the GORC, which will continue to develop further this model. So here you can see a list of the different countries and different national data services that are included in the interest group thus far. So this interest group has been active in the past, and then with the establishment of the GORC working group and interest group, it became a little bit dormant. But now that the GORC model has gained this maturity, and a lot of national developments have happened around national data services. For example, in Australia, the establishment of Australian Research Data Commons, in Germany, for example, the NFDI, in Canada, the Digital Research Alliance, so forth. It was considered to be timely to kind of reactivate the interest group, and we at CSC see this having a lot of potential as a kind of a really dynamic network of global network of national data services, and something where we could learn a lot when we develop the Finnish national services. So that was my takeaways from the kind of content side of the plenary. A little bit of a kind of marketing announcements to conclude. So the next plenary is happening in April, and this is fully online one, and we will be organizing the similar webinars in that context as well, to inform you about interesting things there. But please also consider participating in the webinar, in the online plenary yourself, and then in the autumn of 25, a really interesting event in Australia. So International Data Week is something that is co-organized by CoData, which is the International Science Council's Data Committee, and RDA. So it's a combination of this RDA Plenary and CoData SciDataCon, which is a scientific conference on research data and data more generally also. So start planning already, and of course CSC will be again sponsoring, likely again just one participant, because the travel is relatively costly, but yeah, stay tuned for announcement for sponsoring a participant for that meeting as well. So that was what I had prepared. Happy to answer a few quick questions, and then at the end, when we've heard from Jonas and Pia, to have a discussion in yeah. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much, Heidi. So are there any immediate questions to Heidi? Please raise your hand if you do. Otherwise, I will pass the floor to Jonas.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. So I will be presenting, I'm not going to sugarcoat it the most, the highlight of my RDA trip, which was our own session about FAIR Mapping's working group. This is a up-and-coming working group, actually. It hasn't been endorsed yet, so what I will be presenting here is basically the journey up to this point and the kind of collaborations that were happening during the RDA Plenary. The motivation behind the FAIR Mappings working group is that mappings are an expensive thing to produce, and they are needed in multiple occasions for interoperability, for data and for understanding. But they are difficult to reuse at the moment. So there aren't standards for exchanging mappings. They might be difficult to find because there aren't registries for mappings. And these are the kind of things that we aim to, well, not maybe partially solve, but at least make the situation better for mappings in the working group, or as part of the working group's tasks. So the timeline until now, so this is moving along for a year. So actually the first steps towards this, the working group we took in the RDA Plenary 21, which was in Salzburg last year. And that was also one of those plenaries that were organized together with the International Data Week. And we had a POF session there called Let's Talk About Fair Mappings. We were there with Jan Lefranc and Volmar Volmar, I don't remember his last name, oh no. But we gave a presentation. We basically had 3 different layers. We had the policy layer from the interoperability task force. Then we had Jan from Fair Impact giving this kind of recommendation and best practices related to mappings. And then finally, I presented the view from the FAIR Core for EOSC project, which is all about implementing services that basically use those recommendations and provide concrete services for users. So I've been working on a metadata schema and crosswalk registry in the FAIR Core for EOSC project, and that is also the reason why I was able to participate in the RDA Plenary this year, and why the template looks like it looks like right now. And in addition to that, we had more than 10 lightning talks, so very short 2-minute talks about mappings in the wild. So people step up and presented their mapping cases, different kinds of situations where they are using mappings or what they consider to be mappings. And I think that was a really successful session. We had maybe like 100 participants in a big room, and a lot of discussions afterwards. And based on that, earlier this year we had 3 kickoff meetings. So I put the kickoff in a quotation mark because we were not endorsed yet. But what we basically did there, we had around 20 to 30 people in a Zoom meeting, and we discussed and wrote the charter of the working group. So this is basically, I think nowadays it's called the statement of work. So it described the objectives, deliverables, value proposition, and the work plan of the proposed working group. And this was a collaborative effort. And I forgot to write here, but this was facilitated by the RDA Tiger, which was a very helpful, or is currently also a very helpful resource. So it's a project that supports working groups and interest groups in this kind of like day-to-day things, and helps to organize these kind of events for working meetings and things like that. And that has been very valuable things. And we were also in the previous plenary, which was a virtual one in May this year, with another Bob again. And there's a pattern forming here. So there the name of the session was "Let's Keep Talking About Mappings." And basically, if in the first, the P21, what we presented from our projects, so the Fair Impact and Fair Core for UX, which are both related or have parts that are related to mappings, we presented maybe more of the kind of like the conceptual things or the ideas. In this plenary, we had concrete deliverables from those projects related to mappings that we presented. And also we showed the first version of the charter. So basically the full description of what the working group will be. And here's a couple of highlights from that. So I'm now calling it statement of work, which is the new term for this document. So the planned outputs of the FAIR mappings working group there are multiple outputs, but for example, the first two ones, the technical recommendations, how to make FAIR mappings, and this kind of fairness evaluation grid, and also the practical mapping framework and guidelines. Those are something where the first version will come from the Fair Impact project. And the idea is that in this kind of global context of the RDA working group, we would then create updated versions of all of those project outputs, and then those would become hopefully then RDA endorsed deliverables at the end of the working group's life. And so the working group has a defined it's 18 months is the length of the working group's lifetime. So after that, we should have the planned outputs ready. The first, basically, a new output would be a harmonized mapping use case collection. So this is something I will talk a little bit more later, because this was the focus of the P32. But this is not a collection of mappings, but it's the collection of use cases about mappings. So not the actual mappings, but what are the situations where you are either where you are creating mappings. And the fourth one is a mapping classification or ontology, because what we have realized when talking about mappings quite a lot recently is that it's I'm sorry about the blinks if you're hearing those. I'm gonna shut down. So when people talk about mappings, they might mean multiple different things. They might mean it might be some kind of configuration, or it might mean, for example, the act of transforming data from one format to another. And in order to make it easier to discuss about mappings, we envision this kind of mapping classification or ontology, where you could be more precise in your communication related to mappings. And then I mentioned the difficulties in exchanging mappings and in a format that can be easily reused. And for that, the idea is to extend. There are some models available like SESOM, and the idea is that to extend basically those models to cover more of the mapping landscape. So so different kinds of mappings, and to come up with basically a second version of the exchange model and associated metadata about mappings. And finally, the fair mapping knowledge base would be a resource that would gather all this information, all the outputs, all the data that the working group will collect into one place that then can be maintained also after the working group has gone into maintenance mode, so after 18 months. So basically, to summarize, the output would be a precise vocabulary and reference material to describe the mappings that are either being created or used or recommended, as many of the working groups in the RDA produce these kind of recommendations. So basically, and also then examples and models for expressing the mappings in a more fair way, so that they are reusable and machine readable. And fast forwarding to the end of the current year, so we had a BOF with the title "Let's Start Working" in Costa Rica, and there we basically described the current status of the work. So we have, even though we're not endorsed yet, we have started the work. So what we have been doing first is to define how those use cases will be collected, because they will provide a foundation for the other outputs of the working group. So basically, the classification and the exchange model and the recommendations and the practical framework, all of them will be based on the use cases collected from the communities. And the idea in the use case collection is that we will focus on the implemented cases as opposed to something that we're thinking about using mappings, or we might need something like this, but we want to collect cases that are there already. And these other RDA working groups and interest groups, they are currently the main source and the important source of this wide variety of use cases. And in the plenary, we got interesting propositions. For example, one of them was that the negative mappings that I actually haven't even thought of before. So basically, something that you should be able to say something that should not be mapped. And in this kind of cases, for example, the context is crucial. So, but that was one of the examples of the kind of feedback that we got from the use case collection. And we also held like a small presentations in other sessions within the plenary. So there was a session from the vocabulary services interest groups where we presented our working group's work or the planned work, and then also as part of the harmonized technologies and schemas for fair data in material science and related domains working group. And those were really good opportunities to kind of advertise the work of the working group and basically taking names and introducing the working group and inviting people to join. We have now about 40 members in the working group, and you also can join through the RDA's website if you're interested in mappings. Another group or another session that mappings were discussed was the iAdopt session. So iAdopt is a model, and this was actually my favorite session because they presented a very nice results. So iAdopt is a model for basically deconstructing variables and presenting them in a structured way, so that it would be easier to discover and for example to map to variables in other domains. And the vocabulary mappings are needed or are essential to work with iAdopt models or iAdopt data that goes across domains. And the reason why this was a very nice session was that they have had this iAdopt challenge. where they had asked people, or they had small prizes, and they had asked people to basically take their variables and turn them into something that is expressed with the IADOP model. So basically then people needed to figure out where to get the vocabularies, how to use them in the IADOP context. And they presented the results and also the kind of findings and lessons learned, so how they could make the model better. So I think that was a really nice way to take the deliverables even further. And we're hoping that the outputs of the FAIR mappings working group are or can be referenced and used by multiple RDA working groups that are dealing with mappings. For example, there was a metadata interest group. So this is something that I think is in the maintenance mode now, but they, for example, created crosswalks or described crosswalks between multiple popular metadata schemas. And that could be, for example, revisited using the outputs of the FAIR mappings working group. Thank you. Yes, that was it.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much, Jonas. So any immediate questions to Jonas at this point? I see no hands, so maybe we'll just go forward and give the floor to Pia, and then we can have all the questions and answers at the end. So Pia, please.
Okay, thank you, and hello to everybody. Let's see if I can share the screen. Can you see my presentation now?
Yes.
Yeah, great. And sorry for my flu. I got the funding from EOSC Finland to attend the plenary this year, and apparently I managed to make a typo in the title of the presentation. I have been working as a data steward, part-time data steward in our technical faculty in University of Oulu since this January. So my experience on being a data steward is relatively short, whereas I have been a researcher pretty much all my adult life. I have background in biochemistry and I'm also an architect. So at the moment I work in Oulu School of Architecture, doing my thesis is research through design, kind of a study, and I'm also working in a multidisciplinary research project. So I thought that I cannot get into that deep discussions from the technical point of view than Heidi and Jonas are able to do. But I thought that I would share some insights from my experience in the plenary and sort of what were my takeaways and something that tickled my mind afterwards, the plenary as well. And one of the sessions, it was Birds of a Feather session. It was about creating personas of the data stewards and trying to understand the data steward career tracks. And I think that this is quite important point of view to consider. I don't know how much of this discussion have been had here in Finland, because I haven't been working in the field that long. But this was quite eye-opening to me, how different backgrounds people have when they are working as a data stewards. And for example, in our university, it is just a part of our jobs. We do other kind of research work or project work in addition to being a data steward. So we're not full-time people working in that field. But this session and group of people were trying to understand how diverse or how diverse the career of being a data steward actually is. And the picture here is from the people who were attending the session, that what kind of an work title they have at the moment. So you can see it's quite variable group of people interested in the data steward career track. There were a couple of lightning talks, one from a data librarian who works at Wyoming University, and another one from Fair Data lead at Health RI. And they both had a library background in their profession, and they were working full time. But they also had very diverse things before starting as a data steward. Some commented, somebody working in a library commented that they have actually difficulties to hire people for the data steward positions because they, for example, have to use the title in recruitment process that concerns with the library title, so they weren't able to fully call for researchers to that position. So this even though we use the data steward title, it's still a little bit obscure in many ways. And one thing that they pointed out in that session, that there seems to be a lack of career development, and this might be for some people quite important point of when they enter a data steward job, that is there a career development. But these are something that I think it would be a good idea to discuss and communicate. And then Anu also pointed out that there is that data steward training starting in Tampere next year, which I think it's a very, very good opportunity for Finnish data steward landscape. Then I attended this Birds of a Feather session about non-traditional research outputs. So, and I think that even though this was a very early phase discussion, this was something that interested me in most in this RDA plenary, because as an architect, my research outputs are very different from more traditional scientific research outputs. And when I talk with people, they seem to be very unsure how they could use the open science, how they could benefit from it. So, and how we can even put the data or the research outcomes that we produce into any of those data repositories. And this is particularly important from Finnish research perspective, because we are known for doing a lot of practice-based research and also participatory planning and design processes. And this is this is very close to this kind of a research is very close to what happens in our environment and how we, for example, develop our work practices in any kind of a field, for example, in nursing and healthcare. So a lot of these kind of an output are from people who use the environments or work in those fields, and the outcomes can be anything from a drawing and a poem or to something more detailed study and scenario development. So there is a lot of data that we produce in research that it's hard to put into those repositories, and it is also very hard to find from those repositories. So this is something that Jenny and Adam wanted to develop further, to develop those standards that are used to put this kind of an data and outcomes into repositories, and develop how we can really add the contextual information from where the data was collected. So this is something that is really close to my own heart as a researcher, and I also told them that I would love to work with them further on these matters. And then the third session, I wanted to point it out because this is also more from a research perspective. because I always keep looking for how I can use the AI in my work. And this is more connected to how we can improve the metadata of the what we put into those repositories, so that they would be more easily findable through the AI and different large language models. And also from the point of view that AI could be used to understand how we can improve the metadata for data discovery. So this is also something that I struggle with as a researcher, that how I can put my data out there in a way that it's more easily findable, because the kind of a data I collect it's time consuming, and it's really expensive to collect that kind of a data. So it would be good if we can share these kinds of qualitative data more easily. And that was also interesting notion in one of the lighting talks in that session, that people feel less mental workload when they use AI to search for data, but we are still quite cautious of the credibility of the results. And there's a difference how we interact with the search queries on Google Scholar and with the autopilot. So this was quite interesting. But sorry, overall, I think that this was a very interesting community to visit in the plenary. It is, when I have been visiting the research conferences, there are often this, you get the feeling that, hey, I want to really work with those people and then with this thing, but it's quite impossible because you have to have the research funded to collaborate. But this was more like that, hey, do you want to work with us? Are you interested in developing us? So this is quite new approach for me in that sense. But it was very interesting plenary to attend, so thanks for the funding. I can now stop the sharing so I can see you as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pia, and nice to hear that you found it very useful and interesting experience. And it seems like you got a lot of interesting takeaways to take with you to your work life here in Finland. I think we can now stop the recording, and we'll